First up, I'd just like to say a special thanks to a fellow Sydney-sider who has lent me these books. These are Rosicrucian order booklets. There's about 24 of them. They were published around 1993 to 1995 as far as I can see. So you can see the rosy cross there. You can see the fields there, I would suggest also, but the rosy cross also in that sort of archway, that alcove there. I've bookmarked some of them. There's lots of information here. There's no way I can cover it all, but we'll just flick through and have a look through some of them. We'll just have a look at this little booklet for a start. First up, you will notice the winged orb or winged disc, and you have the rose in the centre with the cross and the triangle and the ankh symbolised there. And just note that symbolism, this particularly the cross and the triangle. Interesting, yes, the fields around here, around the rose coming out. And also we have the 3 steps that we see in the Masonic lodges, and of course the ankhs here. The lotus with the pillar of light coming out of the lotus, and again another higher up, another level, and another lotus with another pillar of light. So we'll just go into the center of the book here, and so we have a Rosicrucian alphabet here, and that's the key to the alphabet there, this sign here, and you have the letter forms coming out of this here, so different forms there. And then in a similar fashion you have a key for the numbering system, the Rosicrucian numbering system here. Over here we have a sticker with a reference to a Rosicrucian order here in Sydney, Australia. And so I'll just have a little read through here where we have just some writing here, and I'll just read down. This alphabet and numerical system are of a special character, for they come from Atlantis, the continent that sunk beneath the ocean about 9000 BC, and on which there flourished an advanced civilization. You will want to know at this stage of your Rosicrucian studies that part of our teachings originated in the Atlantean wisdom. When the time comes, we shall explain why Rosicrucianism today is the custodian of this wisdom, which unfortunately has not reached us in its entirety. The esoteric alphabet and numerical system of the Atlanteans has been bequeathed to us as a heritage, and it is this heritage that we will pass on to you. But we must stress that you must be discreet about both, for, like all subjects dealt with in our monographs, they are of a confidential nature. The 2 traditional keys are shown on the facing page. Those keys would be this key and this key here. I think I should add, and we're over the page here now, that regarding those keys and the alphabet and the numerical system, they're just talking about, fortunately, humanity on a whole has become more tolerant, and that is why the Rosicrucians are no longer under the absolute necessity of using these 2 keys, which were once the subject of the greatest secrecy. In this booklet, we can read just about, this is about healing and using the body to assist healing. But we can read out of here, if you are left-handed, the procedures we described must be reversed. In your case, negative magnetism radiates from your right hand, and positive magnetism radiates from your left hand. Also, the polarity of each of the 2 ganglionic chains is likewise reversed. So it's interesting that we're talking about magnetism radiating from the hands. People who watch my videos will be familiar with this, hopefully. Within this booklet, there's talk of the soul. So I'll just read within here. So there's talk of the soul here, but I'll just read from here. That is why Rosicrucians consider the best way to prove such an existence is to experience it oneself, either by being initiated into the reality of one's divine ego while experiencing cosmic attunement, or by experiencing a separation between the physical and psychic bodies. In your opinion, and then it sort of asks people's opinion. I'll just read out of the first page here of this booklet, where we can read Rosicrucian New Year. And reading, each year in accordance with the instructions of the Imperator of our order, all members of the affiliated bodies meet on a date nearest to the vernal equinox, about March the 21st, when the sun enters the zodiacal sign of Aries, to celebrate the Rosicrucian New Year. Still today, within our New Year, you have the months at the end of the year that really say 7, 8, 9 and 10. September referring to 7, September, October, octo referring to 8, Novem refers to 9, this is Latin, and Decem refers to 10, although I think most people know this. Anyway, our tradition records that it was in the year 1353 BC, during the reign of the great pharaoh Akhenaten, that the first official ceremony of our mystical fraternity was held. Therefore, the Rosicrucian year is calculated by adding 1353 to the current year of the Christian era. And there's further writings through here, and I'll just turn the page. On the next page here is some getting together some bits and pieces for a ritual, and then it sort of goes through the ritual here, but I'm not going to spend time on this. And you know, this is sort of stuff that in a way prepares the initiate. These are sort of, I would say, lower rituals, preparing initiates for higher rituals, I would suggest. Within this journal, I'll just read about the aura. The aura. You now know that the aura of material things is an electromagnetic field resulting from the interaction occurring between the vibrations composing them and those surrounding them. All these vibrations having their origin in spirit energy. In humans, the nature of this electromagnetic field is far more complex, for it is subject to the vibratory influx of two other major energies, vital life force and soul. I think it's worth pointing this out also. So we have vowel sounds. Originally, the intonation of vowel sounds was a fundamental practice within in all religions. It corresponded to the initiatory process which is found in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism and Buddhism. And I've heard that within Christianity the Psalms have been meddled with to take away their potency within true magic practice. But so here we have, by practicing the vowel sounds Om, Ra and Ma, you have probably noticed that their intonation calls upon differing phonatory processes. Also, apart from the psychic center these sounds help to awaken, they cause certain parts of the body to vibrate. And it goes on. Within this booklet, we'll just touch on the subject of vibration. The vibrations of matter. Since all material substances are permeated with spirit energy, and since that energy is of a vibratory nature, it follows that all forms of matter vibrate. To be more precise, we must say that they vibrate both inwardly and outwardly. The role of the inward vibrations is to maintain a constant equilibrium between the forces of adhesion and cohesion, of attraction and repulsion, which combine to give to objects the material structure we know them to have. Without those vibrations and without that equilibrium, material things could not have the tangible aspect they normally offer to our objective senses. As for the outward vibrations emanating from all objects, they are responsible for our perception of the material world. They reach our sensory organs, enabling us to see, hear, touch, taste, and smell those material forms surrounding us. To better understand this concept, let us make the example of a rose. According to what we have just explained, a rose is composed of various vibrations which have their source in spirit energy. Some of these vibrations maintain their inward form and structure, thus allowing the flower to form an organized whole. Others reach our eyes and enable us to discern its shape and its color. Still others reach all the way to our nose and produce a reaction which we can express in terms of a perfume. When we touch the rose, the vibrations emanating from its substance give us the sensation of a velvety texture. Thus, everything we know about the rose and in general about all material things comes from the vibrations emanating from them. I'll now read from this booklet here, and just scanning down here, and I'll read out of this paragraph here on the brain. The brain. Although the brain is not the seat of human consciousness, but the center where the energy of spirit interacts with that of the soul to give birth to thought, its role is essential. For mental activity cannot take place without it. In our explanation of the way in which we interpret the vibrations emitted by the material world, we pointed out that this interpretation was made by an area specializing in the analysis of our sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch sensations. However, our mental processes are quite obviously not limited to that analysis, for independently of the outside world, we are capable of speaking, reflecting, remembering, imagining, etc. There also exist areas of the brain specialized in such activities as speech, reflection, recall, and imagination. Scientists have localized most of those areas which, we must point out, were known to the Egyptians of antiquity. We possess documents in our archives which contain irrefutable proof of such knowledge. In fact, as you will see when studying lessons of the Sixth Temple degree, the members of mystery schools possessed considerable knowledge of the human body and the way to heal a great number of diseases. We will transmit that knowledge to you at the appropriate time. And I'll just do a scan down the rest of the page. And here is a bit of a further scan down the summary of this monograph on the brain. And within this booklet, there is a diagram. We see it here. You can see reference to spirit vibrations, thought vibrations, and soul vibrations. That being the diagram there. And just reading here, the purpose of this diagram is to show how thought vibrations are formed. According to Rosicrucian's thought, vibrations result from the interaction occurring in the brain between spirit vibrations emanating from the outside and from the brain itself, and soul vibrations whose source is situated in our innermost selves. We suggest that you study and examine this diagram closely, for we will consider briefly certain points connected with it in our next monograph. I'm often talking about the spirit world and spirit influence, and here it's, according to the Rosicrucians, they have the brain between spirit vibrations emanating from the outside, so sort of incoming spirit vibrations into the brain. Quite interesting. Fire has always been the basic element of material alchemy, but the latter was only the counterpart of a spiritual alchemy based on the gradual purification of the human soul. That is why fire also symbolized the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual regeneration of humanity. And within this booklet, we have some more reference to the vowel sounds. The vowel sound Om. In Rosicrucian teachings, the vowel sound Om has always been associated with the pineal gland. This association is not arbitrary, of course, for the intonation of the sound causes the gland to vibrate, thus stimulating its physiology and the psychic activity associated with it. Of all vowel sounds, Om is certainly the most universal in that it is used in numerous traditions. In Hinduism and Buddhism, for instance, it is thought to be the most sacred of all sounds. It is called Akshara, which literally means the primordial, the imperishable, the inexhaustible. For Hindus and Buddhists, it is the natural expression of the universal word. From a Rosicrucian standpoint, the sound Om represents the omnipresence, omnipotence, and omniscience of cosmic intelligence. Applied to humans, this symbolism concerns the most spiritual dimension, that is to say, soul itself, as the psychic center corresponding to the pineal is the major center of the soul's activity. The vowel sounds Ra and Ma. The pituitary gland is quite sensitive to the intonation of two vocal sounds, Ra and Ma, pronounced Ra and Ma. As you know, Ra was the sacred name given to the sun by the ancient Egyptians during the reign of Akhenaten, first Grand Master of the mystical traditions perpetuated in our times by our order. For him it was the symbol of the one God he venerated. In fact, the name has not been arbitrarily chosen, in that the intonation of the sound Ra sets in motion an energy of positive predominance of the solar nature. On the other hand, the sound of Ma conveys the spirit of the moon in its cyclical, reflective nature. By combining Ra and Ma, we stimulate the psychic centers corresponding to the pituitary gland, which is suspended from the hypothalamus, within which lies the pineal. The dual function of Ra and Ma contribute effectively to the awakening of the psychic functions associated with the pituitary. Just scanning through here from the vowel sounds of Ra and Ma, I'll just do some reading from this paragraph here. Incidentally, Rama, in the capacity of angel, also directs the electromagnetic vital force, Kashra, which emanates from the sun, Mithra, and which penetrates into the body with the air, Vayu, as breath of life. Students of yoga, of theosophy, and of Rosicrucianism who regularly practice spiritual exercises, invariably including deep breathing and the intonation of certain mantras and of certain vocal sounds, will understand immediately the esoteric reason why the angel Rama is generally evoked along with Mithra in Zoroastrian prayers, and why the angel Vayu is likewise evoked when Rama is involved. All this draws attention to the ancient belief according to which deep breathing and the intonation of vocal sounds, when practiced regularly, not only regenerate our bodies but also elevate us both physically and spiritually. So I'll just scan down here, and this is about the pronunciation of Ra and Ma, and these sounds being linked to the psychic activity and the harmonizing of the pineal and pituitary glands, which are located at the site close to the center of the head. It follows that we will experience the greatest vibratory influence in this region. Most of the time, this influence is manifested by a pleasant sensation of tingling, or by a cool sensation, or depending on the individual, of warmth. But in all cases, the effect experienced is sweet and pleasant. So there are exercises within these booklets, and there's a lot more to this than just, the experience of a sweet and pleasant feeling within those glands. Of course, I'll just scan this or these 2 pages just before I start reading. I'm reading through the camera, so it's kind of difficult in a way, but we'll just start reading here. And this is talking about exaggerations of mind power and these sorts of things. So we stress this point because we know that this matter is subject to numerous exaggerations. We're talking about, I think, moving. Anyway, for instance, some schools of philosophy teach that it is possible, by means of sustaining concentration, to dematerialize oneself and thereby go through walls. To explain that possibility, they suggest that a person can act upon the subatomic particles of his or her body and make them separate from another when in contact with another substance, affirming that the only obstacles to dematerialization are fear and the doubt it arouses within us. In fact, the problem is not so simple. From a Rosicrucian standpoint, it is impossible for a human being to go through a wall physically. As we explained to you, matter owes its structure and its solidity to forces of adhesion and cohesion, attraction and repulsion, which vibrate within it under the action of spirit. And I'll just read further down here. Thus, unlike what is stated in certain philosophical teachings, Rosicrucian tradition considers dematerialization to be impossible, and therefore it cannot be the ideal way to conquer the limits imposed upon us by the material world. The only value in this kind of speculation is to awaken our imagination and the interest we must grant to the whole of our mental faculties. In the postulant section, we affirmed that it was possible to go beyond the barriers of time and space. Beyond the barriers of time and space. Before long, we will prove to you that this is definitely true. You will discover for yourself that such a possibility does not apply to the physical body, but to the psychic body. For it is that body, and that body alone, which can pass through walls, travel considerable distances, perceive manifestations of the invisible, etc. When the moment has come, we will teach you how to succeed in such activities. Let us consider another example of exaggeration connected with the power of thought. It is not unusual to hear or read that the pyramids of Egypt were built solely by the power of levitation. The placement of enormous blocks of stone was indeed facilitated by the use of certain faculties and knowledge mastered by the initiates of the time, but there can be no doubt that construction of these structures required a considerable amount of labour and technical means, calling upon human physical strength. Countless legends have appeared to explain how such monuments were erected, because historians until the present time could not satisfactorily explain the exact methods used. On the psychological plane, the unknown opens the door to imagination, for humans always seek to forget their weaknesses and limitations by contemplating the powers they would like to possess. In that regard, the role of heroic myth is to materialize the physical, mental, and spiritual qualities which every individual in his or her innermost self dreams of acquiring. And I've just scanned the summary of this monograph here. And let's have a look in this booklet. So I'll start reading down here at the aura. In the first atrium we learned that spirit energy is vibratory in nature and has polarity both within material substances and in the apparent vacuum separating these substances. Therefore, all objects are subject to two vibratory currents, one originating in its chemical makeup, magnetic, and the other in its electrical field. These two currents encounter one another in a zone where the electromagnetic field finds itself condensed. This zone is called the aura. So the aura is an electromagnetic field in part. Thus, the aura of objects results from the interference produced between the vibrations composing it and those surrounding it. All those vibrations having their origin in spirit energy. Since this energy is present in the entire universe and inside every material thing, there exists no earthly body, however minuscule it may be, that does not possess a radiance around it. All forms of matter, from grains of sand to planets, possess an aura whose intensity varies in proportion to their mass and vibratory nature. The human body, as a material substance, is also imbued with spirit energy. We have discussed how that energy, exhibiting cohesion and adhesion, attraction and repulsion, gives a solid and tangible structure to our entire body. As is true of all forms of matter, there exists all around the human body an electromagnetic radiance due to the interference continuously occurring between the vibrations composing it and those surrounding it. Consequently, each of us possesses an aura consistent with our physical organism, that aura being practically of the same nature in all individuals. But as we have learned, we are far more than material body, because we are permeated with vital life force and animated by soul throughout life. We are also living, conscious beings. Life and consciousness in the same capacity as matter are energies vibrating at a special frequency in every being. Therefore, they necessarily exert an influence on the electromagnetic field permanently emanating from our being. From what has been stated, it is easy to conclude that the human aura results from the combination of three major energies composing it, namely spirit, vital life force, and soul. It generally takes the form of a luminous halo surrounding the body, but with the colour particularly perceptible around the head and shoulders. This may explain why the saints in Christian iconography are often represented with a halo. In the future, in one of the temple degrees, we will study in detail the nature of the aura, and we will further examine its spectral band, that is, the series of colours it may assume in humans. At this point, though, we can state that this band includes 19 colours, ranging from black to white. It differs totally from the solar spectrum, which contains only 7 colours. We will also explain how you can perceive the colour predominating at a given moment in your aura, or that of another person. As you may suspect, a black aura is the sign of a very negative or even malevolent personality. The colour white, on the contrary, is the expression of a very high degree of evolution. In fact, only the masters permanently have an aura of that colour. If we say permanently, it is because we will teach you that the colour of our aura can change depending on our physical, mental, emotional and spiritual state at any given moment. Now I'll actually go through this experiment here. So reading through this experiment here. Experiment number 19. Although a complete study of the human aura and the technique to be followed when perceiving the colour which predominates at a given moment will be reserved for the future, we propose that at this time that you perform a simple experiment which will enable you to prove its existence. As this experiment must be performed in a soft light, keep the 2 candles of your sanctum lit, but turn off all other lights. Place a bowl of water on the sanctum altar before you, as was done in our previous lesson. Position your hands approximately 1 centimetre, a half inch, from the edge of the bowl without touching it. With your hands so placed, perform deep positive breathing for approximately 3 minutes. In other words, inhale deeply through the nose, hold it for a few moments, then exhale slowly through the nose. Inhale deeply again, etc. While performing this deep breathing, close your eyes and concentrate on your hands. In doing so, proceed as you did at the time of the experiment involved in quickening the subconsciousness. In other words, throughout your concentration, strive to experience the life animating the cells of your bones, muscles, and tissues. After 3 minutes of concentration and deep breathing, you should feel a slight tingling in your hands. Then open your eyes and observe closely, but without undue tension, the area between your hands and the bowl of water. If your concentration is sufficient, your objective consciousness will become quiescent and the subconscious mind will come into focus so that you will psychically perceive a sort of radiance. Note its colour, if possible, and write it in your notebook. In the coming days, repeat this exercise. As your attempts continue, you will gradually perceive a hue which seems to be predominating in your aura at this stage of your evolution, or at least at this particular moment. Or you may possibly perceive only a radiance but no particular colour. Please do not conclude, therefore, that your experiment was a failure. The actual aura has no colour. Colour is a manifestation within our consciousness. We assure you at this point, fratres and sorores, that much more about this matter will be discussed in the later temple degrees. Reading further down here, moreover, Water possesses alchemical potencies which mystics have always used in their experiments. Among those potencies, it has the power to attract psychic and spiritual vibrations and to make them more tangible. Therefore, the effects it produces on the aura of our hands during this experiment is analogous to what happens when we see a rainbow in which solar light is refracted by drops of water. The use of water, therefore, contributes to condensing the electromagnetic radiance surrounding our hands, thus enabling us to perceive it without too much difficulty. Regarding the water, further on here we can read under practical application, and I'll just read through here. So take the bowl of water, hold it to the level of your solar plexus, placing your hands against either side if you wish. You may perform this experiment with a glass. The advantage of using a bowl is that you have more room for your hands. So close your eyes, and while concentrating on the psychic consciousness of your hands, continue with your deep breathing. Having thus concentrated for approximately 3 minutes, slowly drink the contents of the bowl or glass without further delay. This seemingly simple experiment produces two major effects on the water contained in the bowl or glass. In the first place, for reasons explained to you in this monograph, it becomes charged with vital life force. In the second place, it becomes permeated with magnetism, continually emanating from our hands, and which in this case is predominantly positive. Those two combined effects produce a magnetization which imparts a certain power of purification and regeneration to the water. That is why we advise you to drink it. With experience, you will find that this practice brings a surplus of vitality to your body, giving you a genuine sensation of well-being. It is quite effective in revitalizing you when you feel tired or have engaged in intense physical or mental activity. I'll now read about the eye, or eyes. So coming down here, the power of the eyes. As evidenced by the most ancient legends, humans have always attributed a power to the eyes, both in mythological personages and individual mortals. It was thought, especially among early tribes, that this power could be beneficent or malevolent. The latter supposition has led to the belief in the evil eye. According to this belief, particularly wicked persons can send a destructive fluid toward their victims by means of their evil eye. In popular language, we find traces of this superstition for such expressions as a withering glance or if looks could kill, bear testimony to the destructive power which was attributed to the evil eye of cruel and wicked individuals in the old days. To protect themselves, people who believed in this superstition wore such things as veils, talismans, or certain perfumes. To keep the evil eye from entering their houses and from causing them harm, they painted geometric designs on the doors and windows, most of the time in a blue colour, for they believed that malevolent influences lost themselves in those designs and drowned in that colour. Today, in rural areas, some people shield themselves against such influences by hanging a horseshoe over the door on a wall of their house. Naturally, we have already explained, such beliefs have no foundation except through ignorance of natural laws. Putting aside superstitious beliefs in a so-called evil eye, mystics have always understood the spiritual value of the single eye as a source of power and clairvoyance. For example, in the Egyptian mysteries, the hieroglyph for Osiris is a composition emblem of a single eye and a throne, or seat of power. Anthropomorphized, the god Osiris, the single eye, and the goddess Isis, the seat or throne of power, are the parents of Horus, the falcon god. The right eye of Horus traditionally had the power to heal, neutralize evil, read thoughts, perceive the future, materialize desires, etc. This conviction was so strong that the Eye of Horus was venerated in itself, and even today it is known in all mystical traditions as the symbol of God's omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipotence, or more familiarly, the all-seeing eye. This symbol assumes real importance in Rosicrucian tradition because our order perpetuates the Egyptian wisdom and its teachings, and is the universal trustee of all the mystical symbolism connected with these ancient teachings. When you are admitted to the temple of a lodge or chapter of our order, you will have occasion to see various representations of the Eye of Horus, and to be initiated into the mystical sense Rosicrucians have always attributed to this special symbol. In our teachings, the third eye does not correspond to a true eye, located in the center of the forehead just beneath the skin. In fact, we feel it does not designate an organ, but a faculty, an attribute of our consciousness that perceives psychic phenomena which we cannot see with our physical sight. Of what does this faculty consist, and how does it operate? So just we can look at the text going down the page here, and I won't read through this, but it's there to read. And on this page here we have a diagram of the brain and the various regions of the brain within here, or some of them, and the paragraph there. I'll just scan through this writing here, which is about the voice and sound, among other things, and I'll read from this final paragraph here. The priests, having discovered the potency of the above-mentioned mantrams or spells, realizing that if certain notes were reiterated, definite results could be obtained and definite powers brought into action, used this particular form of magic, for magic it was, for noble and constructive ends during the earlier periods of Atlantean history. Under the influence of initiates, sound was employed to build beautiful and wonder-inspiring forms. Let's have a look within this booklet here. Within the first page here we have the story of light, and then further down here we have a bit of a recount from the Bible here, and that continues to the back cover. I'll just do a bit of reading over here. The time has now come for you to step beyond the portal leading to the second room of the antechamber of the symbolic temple of our tradition, symbolic temple. We urge you to now perform the following ritual, for it constitutes an initiation into the teachings that will be transmitted to you in the second atrium. As it was true for the introductory ritual of the first atrium, it is imperative that you place yourself in the proper setting, because the effectiveness of this ritual depends to a large extent on the mental and emotional conditions associated with it. Thus, it must be performed within a Rosicrucian sanctum, be it permanent or temporary. In other words, you should have at your disposal a table, mirror, and 2 candles. Now, just further down here, you can stop, of course, and freeze and read it if you want. We must also remind you that all Rosicrucian initiations are based on laws and principles that have no connection with occult, magical, or superstitious practices. Their purpose, on the contrary, is to produce a mental catharsis, in other words, a purification of all thoughts which prevent you from living in perfect harmony with the God of your heart and realization. And we'll just go over to the next page here. Here is a diagram of the Rosicrucian sanctum right here, and I'll just go through some instructions here, just because things get really technical regarding the way things are positioned and all the rest of it, and not so much for this circumstance, but in other circumstances they can too, for various equipment within magical practice. It gets quite involved. So reading. To perform this initiation into the second atrium, arrange your sanctum in the following manner. Place on the floor a triangle made of white fabric or cardboard, with each side approximately 25 inches 60 centimeters long. This triangle is placed, as shown in the diagram on page 5, approximately 3.5 feet or 1 meter from your sanctum altar. At points 2 and 3 of the white triangle, place 2 unlit sanctum candles. So there would be the unlit sanctum candles there. At the centre of the white triangle, place an incense burner containing a stick of incense. Ignite that incense only when you are ready to perform the ritual. So that would be the incense right there. Place your chair at point 2 of the white triangle and have it face the incense burner. Have a box of matches and a snuffer within reach. Wash your hands and drink a glass of water as a token of physical and mental purification. Put on your Rosicrucian apron if you have one. The lighting of the room in which you have set up your sanctum must be as soft as possible. However, the light must be sufficient for you to read the instructions without difficulty. In the ritual you are about to perform, you must always imagine that you are directed by your class master and that he or she is present on the invisible plane. As soon as you feel ready for this initiation, light the 2 candles, beginning with the one on the left. Then ignite the incense and stand at point 1 of the white triangle. So once again, we have a table here with a mirror. This is the Rosicrucian sanctum. You can see the directions pointed out here, and I'll just turn the page. So within here, within the writing on the next page, you have directions to follow and the actual ritual to read here. And there's a lot of text. So I'm just scanning through this. I'll just point out within here now on the logo you see Crow Mart, and I'll just read from this, and this is within this ritual here, it seems. You must now receive the password which certifies that you did indeed pass the second portal of the neophyte section. That word is Cromat. It is Egyptian in origin and means the truth shall be. Someday, perhaps this word will be asked of you in a special circumstance. Learn this word, but keep it secret, for it is part of the traditional terminology of our order. And there's further writing through here.
My purity is the purity of divinity of the holy temple. Therefore, evil shall not befall me in this world, because I, even I, know laws of God which are God. Crow, Mart.
Taste of the steps you would take on your way through the ranks of occultism. Let's have a look through this booklet here. There is talk within here of you and I possessing universal consciousness or cosmic consciousness, and the text follows through. I notice when I look at the clock I often see 11 past 11. I don't know why that is, but anyway, or 11 past 1, but anyway. So there's an experiment here. Every time you wish to know the time, refrain from consulting a clock, a watch or clock. Instead, close your eyes and concentrate for a few seconds on the question, what time is it exactly? Then remain passive for a few moments and place yourself in a state of inner receptivity. If you succeed, the reply will come as a precise impression of figures representing the exact time, or as the feeling that it is a certain number of minutes after or before such and such an hour. And it goes on there. Here's a bit of a cosmic consciousness diagram. From a Rosicrucian standpoint, the Akashic records are the indelible and eternal annals of the cosmic. They contain the entire knowledge of mankind's past and, of course, of its present. By attuning the universal memory, we can gain access to those symbolic archives and consult the pages concerning the most remote events marking the history of mankind and generally the evolution of life itself. This explains how great initiates could learn in the course of their meditations, how the submersion of Atlantis and the exile of the survivors of that lost continent occurred, how the primordial tradition was transmitted through space and time, how the Egyptians of antiquity built their temples and their pyramids, and many other mysteries which defy the reason of man. In fact, some of our teachings are composed of those mystical revelations which the Rosicrucian masters of our order received when they were meditating on the great truths of existence. And it goes through here, and we'll just have a brief look at the... so in the summary of the monograph here, we have just mention of cosmic attunement, and various other points through here. Just looking through here, we have mention of a golden age, and I'll just read from in here. Indeed, we are convinced that if humanity does not react by taking a more spiritual direction in the future, it will not become aware of the golden age, which should crown the cycle that has just commenced and that traditionally corresponds to the Aquarian age. And I'll just now go to the back of the book. And then just within the monograph here, there's also talk, again, sort of reiterating what was just said. And in this booklet, we have mention of reincarnation here. And the period here, according to Rosicrucian tradition, 144 years compose the ideal cycle between two successive reincarnations. And I'll just sort of scan the next page there. Further into the booklet, there is writing on the subject of karma. Live by the sword, die by the sword. Rosicrucian mystics also view karma as the balancing of the scales of action through the law of attraction. Interestingly, here we can read, Rosicrucian students know that psychic energy follows thought. We must understand that the hardships we experience are not all of karmic origin. Therefore, we must not attribute all our misfortunes or those of others to the unfolding of negative karma. Within this booklet here, there is mention of keyboards of spirit within the writing here. Keyboards of spirit, and there is a diagram on the next page. And this is the diagram here. Within this booklet here, we can read that Benjamin Franklin was a Rosicrucian. I'll now do a bit of reading out of this booklet. We can say, therefore, that the human being consists of three bodies: the physical, psychic, and spiritual soul. The psychic body acting as an intermediary between the other two. The ancient Egyptians, who possessed considerable knowledge in funerary art, found a significant way of symbolizing these three bodies. Immediately after death, the pharaoh's body was embalmed and placed into a mummy-shaped coffin, which in turn was placed into a sarcophagus. In current Rosicrucian terminology, we seldom use the expression spiritual body, in that other philosophical and mystical movements have retained this expression but given it a different significance than the one attributed to it by initiates of the past. To be more precise, they use it too often to express the idea that our soul is shaped like the physical body, taking the form of a spiritual figure composed of several distinct parts: head, trunk, and limbs. But that is not accurate. The soul is, we repeat, a cosmic essence, a subtle energy permeating our entire being, which in itself is absolutely shapeless. Most of all, when considering the mystical definition of the human, we must keep in mind the all-important concept of duality. In other words, the fact that we are body and soul, substance and essence. This must hold our full attention. As we pointed out in the last monograph, the psychic part of our being, although important, is only an emanation from the spiritual entity animating us, and it evolves in contact with the mundane world from the moment it incarnates within us. Let's have a look within this booklet here. I'm just about to start reading about flames, but before I start, I'll just mention that I met an occultist whom advised me that as an exercise I should practice looking into the flame of a white candle and trying to visualize the pineal gland, my own pineal gland, within that flame. Not that this is, of course, not something you're going to see straight away, but it's more of a mental exercise. And according to this particular occultist, after a while you do get a vision of your own pineal gland, although I don't, anyway, I'll leave it at that. Let's have a read through here. We will now continue our study of concentration, for there are still a certain number of points to consider. In our previous experiment, you must have perceived the aura of the flame and the upper part of the candle. The aura is displayed in the form of a luminous halo surrounding the zone of light produced by the flame. But it must be remembered that the aura is not the light itself, but the prolongation of its radiance. This explains why it does not present in all the varied colours you may observe in the flame. Most of the time it is perceived as a sort of whitish veil. It is difficult to define in words what the aura of a flame is. Thus, in the practical application towards the end of this monograph, you will find a diagram that will help you to better understand this brief explanation. We are convinced that you did perceive the aura, for its vibratory nature is such that it easily affects our psychic vision. We use the term psychic vision because the aura of the candle flame and in general of all objects surrounding us is not visible to our physical eyes. It results rather from the interaction which occurs between its own vibrations and those of the immediate environment. We know that such an interaction is manifested as a subtle electromagnetic field. It is futile, therefore, to try to perceive the aura of things by using our purely objective sight, in that we remain on a mental plane which prevents any psychic impression from stimulating the higher levels of our consciousness. In the experiment in our last monograph, we asked you to blink your eyes normally, a statement that you may have wondered about. To explain further, when practicing the experiments in which you are instructed to gaze at the candle flame or some other object, do not stare or strain the eyes in any way. Blink them naturally and remain completely relaxed. Assume a relaxed and passive manner, looking into space, though looking through or beyond the object under consideration. All concentration must be achieved in a peaceful and relaxed way. When it is performed correctly, a moment will come when your psychic vision supersedes physical vision. Achieving this state is not easy, especially at first, but regular training will enable you to acquire the required mastery to succeed. So there is an experiment here to do, and we can read here that, for example here, as soon as you perceive the aura of the flame, continue your concentration while saying mentally red, 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 until it seems red to you. After a short pause, do the same with the colours orange, yellow, etc. And they would be the 7 solar colours. On the next page we can read Flaming Rosy Cross and experiment number 6. So following the instructions found in experiment number 4 in the last monograph, concentrate on the candle flame in your sanctum, but do not try to perceive its aura. As soon as your concentration is at its peak, imagine that the candle flame slowly takes the form of a rosy cross, or if it seems easier to you, that a rosy cross gradually appears inside the flame. As far as possible, see the golden cross and red rose. While you concentrate, repeat mentally the words rosy cross until you have a perfectly clear vision of the whole. When you have succeeded in this, maintain the vision for a few moments and then stop your concentration. Do not become discouraged if the results you obtain fall short of your expectations. We know that this experiment is difficult to perform the first time, for it demands deep concentration and requires the use of a faculty that will be the subject of our next monograph, visualization. After repeating it once or twice, put the lit candle back in its place and light the other one again, so as to continue your normal sanctum period. And then there is further writing. In here we have the visualization of one's desires and writings along those lines. I'll just read within here. Among those desires you want to have materialize, one deserves your full and continuing attention, peace in the world. Obviously, such a wish has the approval of the cosmic, and any thought form created for the purpose of realizing it receives the influx of the most positive forces of the universe. As a Rosicrucian, it should be the daily subject of visualization on your part, as it corresponds to an ideal that benefits all human beings and constitutes a basic goal humanity must reach in its earthly evolution. Consequently, you will wish to do your part in contributing to its realization. Therefore, whenever you have the opportunity, withdraw to a quiet place, such as your sanctum, and visualize the advent of peace on earth for a few moments. Interestingly, here we have, if it pleases the cosmic, it is done. And from a synchromystical standpoint, and I certainly have this, what I seem to observe as a synchromystical existence from my own observations anyway. I sort of see those within my life, with the things that occur here and there. But anyway, just an interesting phrase there out of this Rosicrucian book. If it pleases the cosmic, it is done. From the monograph here in the back of the book, again, we can see, if it pleases the cosmic, it is done. I'll just read from here. If we visualize the fulfillment of a desire that is in complete harmony with the overall good, it automatically receives the cosmic's approval and becomes a thought form. That is, a thought that is about to manifest on the earthly plane. This is what is meant by the phrase, if it pleases the cosmic, it is done. And up here, the cosmic is always ready to assist in the materialization of aspirations and desires which contribute to humanity's happiness. For happiness, when it is based on a virtuous life, serves as a pillar for the evolution of the soul personality. Bye for now, and all the best.